Good afternoon, everyone. First off, I'd like to give a big shout out to the Bubble team for putting this together. Like my cup's full, being a full-time Bubble developer and seeing all the exciting things happening in the Bubble community. So yeah, please give a round of applause to them. Awesome event. Really excited for tomorrow as well. So today I'll be talking about how we at Mochary Method went from fully functional code application to scrapping it and going all to Bubble. So let's get started. So what I did was I gave my slides to ChatGPT and I said, hey, can you give me like a Mr. Beast title for my hook? And it said the $2 million app we deleted. I don't know how it came up with that number, but maybe it's because we spent about 3 years building the initial application. We had full-time developers, project managers, designers on our staff. But nonetheless, this story would be how we say, you know what? Bubble makes more sense. So let's get started. So first off, Mochary Method. Our main bread and butter is executive coaching. We coach some of the top CEOs in Silicon Valley, from Brian Armstrong at Coinbase to all kinds of various companies. And we'll see on the next slide here. Actually, this one here is just a shout out from Sam Altman, another one of the clients we coach. I like to joke that Matt Mochary is the founder and what the company's named after, obviously. That he's like the Rick Rubin of the startup world, where the guy lives a very hippie lifestyle. He's out in Hawaii. He surfs all day long. Like sometimes I'll text him and be like, hey, I'm gonna push this live. Are you good with it? And then I won't hear back because he was out surfing. But he's well known in Silicon Valley and CEOs reach out to him and we have a huge wait list of clients that we want to take on. So it's a great problem to have. And here on the right side, you'll see some of the companies we coach, AngelList, Reddit, Vendor, basically big names in startup world. And it's crazy to say that these companies, their CEOs use our software. They're using a Bubble-built application, right? Like they're on the frontier of technological innovations, and then we're like, hey, use this Bubble app. So a little more about what we do. Specifically, it's coaching these CEOs through some type of either transition that they want to make, or just in general, they need a soundboard, advice board, somebody who's been there, done that, and be able to guide them in whatever decision they're trying to make, right? Our curriculum is nothing special in the sense that it's not proprietary. You could just go on either mocharymethod.com and find like our blog section for it, or honestly, Matt prefers to just put everything on a Google Doc. So you might have seen, like Hacker News or something, where our entire curriculum, everything he coaches, even his book is on a Google Doc. You can just look at it and be like, oh, okay, I got it. So let's move on here. So now let's talk about the complication, and this will build into why we made the transition and what was the decision factor there. So before I get into this side, one thing I want to note is, and maybe a lot of companies say this, but we're not a normal company in the sense that, especially in the tech world, we didn't come to building software because that was our main business. Our main business is CEO coaching, right? The user base we already have, and if Matt says, hey, I'm gonna have you use this software because that's what I do my coaching in, the CEOs will use it, right? So we don't have the problem of customer acquisition. We're actually on a huge backlog of companies that want to adopt our software, but we just aren't ready to do that yet. And the other thing is, Matt's perspective on things is very different. He loves lean operations, and he realized that he's gonna build the same software parallel. So you'll have two teams building the exact same thing at the same time, and then seeing which one wins. So putting employees, internal organization, head-to-head against each other and saying, hey, one of you is gonna end up being the victor. One of you is gonna build something that I truly love, and that's the one we're gonna go with, right? So that's an interesting working environment. Obviously, have a lot of camaraderie, but not a lot of companies would be willing to do that, as well as spend the money, both on the development side, but the time side, because now Matt, as the CEO, also has to give these companies, or these teams, his undivided attention and saying, this is the right direction or this is not the right direction. So all that to say is, we didn't really know what the software was gonna be, right? Like we recognized that in our coaching, a lot of the stuff that Matt and other coaches, because we have now other coaches that do the coaching as well, a lot of the stuff we do, especially based on accountability, keeping track of meetings, all those functionalities could be automated with software, and we wanted to build that. The good thing we had, though, was we had the customer base. We had the users, and they were very willing to experiment because it made their lives better, because it made them easier to adopt the Mochary method, right? Like, not only do I have this abstract concept of how to run an organization, but I also have a piece of software that helps me implement it in my company. So the complication came down to time. Because we didn't really know what the software was going to be like, we spent about 2 years on the engineering team building out these features that eventually became tech debt. Because they would have sprint cycles, they would have designers designing stuff, and then we'd introduce it to the users and be like, I don't know, I don't really like it, or I wish it did this, or I wish it did that. And reverting back or modifying it took a lot of time, right? Like, and it was difficult for the engineering teams because they'd be like, man, we just spent a 6-week sprint building out this new feature, and then we're not even using it. Like, it's demotivational. And obviously, there's a cost behind it, right? So at the peak of the original software, I think we had 5 full-time software engineers, project manager, and a designer on the team. So anytime we're making a new feature idea or iterating on it, it just costs a lot of money. And lastly, the impact, right? It's unknown, whatever feature we build, how it will stick, right? It might be a good idea to us, but it actually might be a great idea to the end user once they actually get a feel for it. And I'll give you a good example of that in the demo in the next slide. Oh, it's not the next slide. All right, so the question was, and I alluded to this in regards to how we build Parallel, is there a way we can iterate on features, on product, without spending a 6-week dev cycle, right? Like, the software that we build is always going to be evolving. It's always going to change based on all of the new CEOs we onboard, how they want to run their companies. We might recognize, oh, you know what? They need to be able to modify this. We hard-coded it, so we need to change that. And finally, the question was, all right, how do we go from a great idea that Matt has to a feature in the application in 24 hours? Like, is that possible? Because that's what he wanted. So, obviously, enter Bubble. In this slide, I'm going to kind of talk about how we made the transition. So first off, when Matt decided he was going to onboard a no-coding team to try to do the same thing of building this solution, that decision wasn't actually made. It was, all right, I'm going to hire, at the time it was 4 Bubble developers, and I'm going to see what they can build. Because he was like, I have no clue what a Bubble developer can build, but I keep hearing this, that some of my clients have mentioned it, that you can build full-fledged applications with no-code developers. They can run by themselves. Is that actually true? So we started with 4 Bubble developers, and initially we were building standalone features. So he might have a great idea for one of the things he recommends is an energy audit, where you take a look at your calendar and recognize, all right, what event on my calendar is an energy strainer, and which one is a amplifier, right? What did I actually enjoy doing that I did last week, and what did I absolutely hate? Like, if I never had to do that again, what is that, right? And he recommends his CEOs to do that on a weekly basis. And he's like, wait, why can't, because then they had to write it down on a piece of paper or a Google Doc and then report back to him. He's like, why can't software do that? Right? So that was one of the initial standalone features we built. But then I had the next idea of, okay, can we build a standalone app in Bubble that connects to the custom code software? Yes, but it was too challenging. Like, building Bubble apps that connected to the software was just so hard, because it wasn't that the Bubble side was hard, it was we had to get engineering time. The engineers had to then be ready to make changes to us, and we didn't speak their language. We didn't understand how, like, I had no clue what GraphQL was. Like, the first time I was like, hey, can you give me like a database schema so I could see how you're storing everything? And the guy was like, dude, I use GraphQL, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't have the schema to give to you. So it just didn't work. So then finally we decided, all right, this is where we came to the conclusion of, let's build the exact same application twice. Let's have a no-code team build what was called Company OS at the time in parallel. And the 2 questions we had was, can a no-code team catch up to the existing software that we've been building for 2+ years? Check. And then the next one is, can they then make it scalable? Is it reliable, secure? And we can expand on it. And we did that with all of the natural skepticism of, can Bubble scale, right? Because at the end of the day, it was like, this is an unknown territory. It's easy to understand, I need software developers. There's a huge talent pool. I'll hire senior engineers, they'll tell me what to do. But then there's this new at the time, I guess, it might have been 5 years old by then, but bubble tool that there's really no dogma or the right way of doing things or literature on, there's no academic papers on how to build good database structures in Bubble, right? So that was the biggest skepticism, is like, all right, is whoever going to build this, are they going to do it even right? Or are they going to screw something up and then next thing I know, leaking data or whatever? So next slide. All right, so this is kind of a video. I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of what the application looks like. And I wonder if I could pause. No, I can't. So in a nutshell, what I'm demonstrating here is our meeting management software. So one of the big things we preach is when you come into a meeting, you never want to enter a meeting and have no clue what people are going to talk about. Every single person who's a member of a meeting or participant, they have to pre-write, which is this stage right here. I'm providing an update on my goal, and I did this in audio. And I mentioned this earlier in one of my questions is, this was a feature that we unlocked because somebody said, hey, I don't want to write. I'm a CEO, I'm busy, I don't want to sit here. So right there is the goal update, right? I don't want to type everything out. I just want to talk to a piece of software like I talk to you, Matt, and tell you what's going on in my world. So we just built audio to Whisper, sent it to OpenAI and said, hey, return this in this structure. And the CEOs loved it, and it was a random feature we just come up with in 2 days. And it's one of the biggest things that people love now. And same thing here. Somebody wants to present an issue into the meeting. I don't want to think through and answer all the questions of what's the issue, how did I cause it, and what I think the proposed solution is. I just want to blabber and talk about the issue and then have it structured for me, right? Because, we're humans. And that's what I'm demonstrating here is. And then lastly here, this is just another integration, more so with code, is I can create a topic, I could tag somebody, and then it will notify them in Slack. Because nobody likes email messages. And there you go. So I got a Slack notification that I created a topic for the meeting, and it got connected, right? OK, I think that's it. All right. So all that to tie into is what we ultimately discovered is custom code by itself is amazing, right? Now, I want to also highlight that the software that we initially had was amazing, and it was the right product, and we had gotten close to product market fit. We had users using it. They loved it. It was great. It was well built. The only issue we had was speed of execution and spending time or wasting time building features that users might not actually end up using. And ultimately, what we discovered is it's not just Bubble. It's not just custom code. It's actually the combination of the two that really makes a difference. If I run into a challenge in Bubble, I no longer just sit there, twiddling my thumbs saying, like, I can't do this. I can't do this in Bubble. It doesn't work. I just offset that to the custom code team, who either builds a plugin, integrates it with maybe an API that they put together for me, or whatever, right? But that's on them to figure out. And they do it, and bam, now we have a feature. And so that's kind of the ending of my conversation here is we recognize that don't just stop and say, I can do this with this software, and I can do this with this type of language. It's just find a solution. And lastly, I know I'm preaching to the choir because a lot of us out here are professional Bubble developers, but this right here is one of the easiest ways I think you can get started implementing custom code to your Bubble applications. Initially, I would just put some HTML elements or some JavaScript in an HTML element in Bubble, right? And then I was playing with this, and I wrote this up on Twitter too, and it was kind of blowing my mind that I could write CSS and JavaScript. Actually, I didn't write it. I had Cursor write CSS and JavaScript for me. And then I just hosted it in Cloudflare. It gave me a CDN link. So if you know what CDN is, it's content delivery. So it's like instantly populating. And then in the Bubble editor, so the top screenshot is I just linked it to that. And so now I'm no longer limited by Bubble's CSS values or properties that I can access, right? Like in Bubble, I can only have one type of shadow, right? Like it's outset, I set those 4 values, and that's it. But then my designer built something that has 6 shadows. And I'm sitting there like, I can't do it. Well, now I can. I just have Cursor write it for me. And then thanks to the awesome plugin, what was it called? Classify, yeah. By the way, whoever built it, like, I want to buy you a beer because that thing's been amazing. Thanks to Classify, I just put the class on the Bubble element, and now that function or that feature or the CSS styling is instantly applied, and I can do this without pushing live, right? I can quickly make a change. And this isn't just UI. Actually, I think I skipped over in the video, but we built functionalities like being able to click a piece of text that was quoted, like a comment. I quoted an initial piece of text, and if I click on it, I had Cursor write a JavaScript function that highlighted the original text, right? Like, that was super simple. I don't know how I would have built that on Bubble. And lastly, this is what our team structure looks like now. So initially, we had, like I said, 5 full-stack developers, a project manager, and a designer. Now we're no longer at 1 Bubble developer, actually. Minhal, he just joined the team. Now we're at 2 Bubble developers. And we have 2 full-stack developers whose main job is to support the Bubble project. So if we run into an issue, I need a plugin built, that's the person who would just take on the project. Whatever, if the other guy's working on something, this guy will take it on. And they'll just start to finish, they'll implement the function, right? Or the functionality. And at first, there was some hesitancy around that, right? Like, there was some hesitancy in a full-stack engineer saying, hey, dude, like, they're saying, hey, I can build applications all by myself, but you want me to build stuff to augment a no-code tool? Like, that just seems weird. And I've already built these functionalities in the initial piece of code. But then once they realize, like, oh, actually, this is much better. I don't have to worry about the full life cycle of maintaining this application. I just have to build this one feature, and that's it. Like, they got a lot more job satisfaction there as well. And what I was surprised about was they instantly picked up Bubble. Like I said, hey, let's hop on some calls. I'll give you a walkthrough. And he's like, no, I'll just play around with it. And then I think one of the guys said he watched Gregory's videos, and he's like, okay, I got it. So now I can ask them to fix something. They'll build a plugin. They'll go implement it in Bubble, and then just text me or DM me in Slack like, hey, the branch is ready to go. Push it whenever, right? So that's been a huge unlock because now as a Bubble developer, I'm not sitting there trying to think of the code or ask AI to do it. I have full stack developers on the team. And obviously, like I mentioned earlier, this isn't for everybody, right? Not a lot of, especially not at a startup level, can afford having both Bubble developers and full stack engineers on their team. Lessons learned. So how we approach building, like I said earlier, is we actually don't know what the final product's going to look like. It's iterative. We introduce it to our users, which, funny enough, our beta users are CEOs of billion-dollar companies, so it's really funny. Like, one of those made a comment, it's like, I'm just testing your software for you. Like, thanks. Like, yeah, you're helping us out. But we're not going to waste time thinking up the perfect implementation, the most scalable solution to a feature. We're just going to ship what works, what we think is the 60, 70% solution, introduce it to users, see what sticks, and then figure out how to implement it properly in Bubble, right? And that was one of the biggest unlocks is we're no longer tied to long dev cycles and disappointments when something doesn't resonate with the users. And find solutions. And I already touched on this, but if you want to kind of mirror a similar approach, just focus on speed. Like, it sounds so elementary, so basic, especially in the startup world of like, well, obviously, speed of execution is important. Obviously, getting products in the hands of users is important. But it's these basic concepts that it took us, even as a company that coaches CEOs, to go through the pain to recognize that actually, this is the right way. Like, there's a reason these simple concepts of ship fast, break things, get the product in the hands of the users resonates is because it's true. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. This works, right? And if it works for us, where the client is a time-constrained CEO who recognizes the value that software provides, even if it's broken or even if it's not fully finished, then I don't see why it couldn't work when you're introducing it to a less friction marketplace, right? And that's it. And as a thank you, I also built a side app called Designs Figma to Bubble. If you want to check it out, I'm giving away a free month if you use the Bubblecon. No credit card required. So thanks.